Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to all.
Good afternoon.
Your Eminence, thank you for being with us. Yes. Welcome to this webinar on the Encyclical Fratelli Tutti, signed by Pope Francis on the 3rd of October this year. I think we can all agree that Pope Francis has been speaking to the heart of Caritas since the beginning of his pontificate in 2013. We have been and continue to be inspired by his gestures and words in our specific mission as Caritas in the church and in society. So this is a very important moment we want to spend together going through this very important encyclical, which is which will inspire us for the many years to come in our mission. So welcome again to everybody. I want to ask Martha to give you some indications as to how we are going to use these means, but because they are good, but sometimes they create also some trouble. So I'm asking her to share to give some indications before we start. Yeah, please, Martha.
Good afternoon, everybody. We just ask you please to stay on mute, and as you can find in the chat some guidelines. But if you would like to intervene or to ask a question later on to the speakers, you can just send a question in a private message to me, and I will give you the floor when it will be the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha. So I was saying that Pope Francis has been speaking to the heart of Caritas from right the beginning of his pontificate. I remember that during the inaugural Mass, he said that he wanted a poor church for the poor. Yeah. And the raison d'etre of Caritas, the reason why we exist as Caritas is to serve, to accompany, and to defend the poor. In his apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, he insisted on the social dimension of evangelization. Those who have read this exhortation know that the whole chapter 4 is dedicated to that. So we are invited to put the poor at the center of our preoccupations and to work for their social inclusion, to let ourselves be evangelized by them. So this exhortation helps us understand that the service of charity is central to the unique mission of the church, which exists to evangelize. The mission of the church is to evangelize. Then in 2015, we were given a Laudato Si on care for our common home. The Holy Father once said it was not an encyclical on ecology, but a social encyclical. So you will remember that we took inspiration from Laudato Si when developing our strategic framework 2015-2019. And our current strategic framework was also developed through the lens of Laudato Si. And we have now Fratelli Tutti, a very powerful call to become part of a Samaritan church, which is able to set a ray of light in the dark clouds over a closed world, we read in Fratelli Tutti. So we are here to introduce ourselves to this important encyclical. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to our speakers who will take us through the document and help us understand the essential message for us as we continue our journey together as a confederation in the fulfillment of the mission which is entrusted to us to become more and more a sign of God's love for humanity. And our first speaker today is our president, His Eminence, Cardinal Tagle. Thank you again, Your Eminence, for taking time to be with us. We have asked His Eminence to reflect with us on the concept of charity in Fratelli Tutti and draw some lessons for Caritas. So, Your Eminence, we give you the floor. You have 20 minutes, and since you cannot maybe be with us there until the end of this webinar, we will take a few minutes to ask some questions or to make comments following your presentation. Welcome again, Your Eminence, and thank you.
Thank you, Monsignor Pierre, and thank you, Aloysius, and thanks to the Secretariat for organizing this webinar. And I see Father Augusto already there, and so thank you also for being the living link between the Dicastery for the Promotion of Human Development and Caritas. And I would like to greet all of those who are participating in this webinar. I'm really sorry that I could not stay up to the end because there is another video conference that I will be attending this afternoon. Actually, two. Yeah. So the topic given to me, as explained by Monsignor Pierre, is the concept of charity in the Encyclical and the lessons that Caritas could draw from them. My first appeal to everyone is please read the Encyclical attentively, meditatively. Please do not rely only on summaries and commentaries. Read the Encyclical. It is quite long, I should say, and it is sometimes repetitive, but I think the repetition serves a purpose. Some of the key ideas in the teachings of Pope Francis, as found in his earlier encyclicals and exhortations and homilies, are found again in Fratelli Tutti. And he brings them into a new synthesis as a response to the present conditions of a closed world, but always drawing from the rich biblical tradition of the church and the teachings, both dogmatic, moral, and the social teachings of the church. So, and let us join him. Let us join him in this extended reflection. He begins by looking at the signs, the very sad signs in the world, signs of the lack of love called brotherhood or sisterhood in our world. And you can see there the many manifestations of a world that is closing on itself. And so we have in our world little worlds closed. And what suffers is the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. And in this closed world, the poor suffer the most. All of us suffer, but the poor suffer the most. They are the ones who are easily forgotten, neglected, thrown away. Literally, the doors are closed to them. Eyes are close to them. Hands are close to them. Hearts are close to them. And so we should be disturbed by the consequences of the closed world, consequences on human beings, consequences on the future, and consequences for creation. Now, with that as a background, I won't be able to go through all the chapters, but I, for the sake of brevity, would like to focus on two main points, and then I go to the lessons for Caritas. The first point is the teaching about universal love. So in my reading of Fratelli Tutti, the image of charity is that of universal love. Because that's how God loves. God loves everyone. That's the love that Jesus showed. He loved everyone, including those, or especially those that society considered unlovable, outcasts. And he died for all as the supreme act of his love. And their gift of the Holy Spirit that breathes a form of communion that recreates the world. And up to now, creation is groaning as the Holy Spirit is groaning as we await the revelation of the freedom of the children of God, freed from the closed doors. Universal love. According to Pope Francis, this universal love is openness to others, as opposed to being closed, openness to others. Universality happens when there is openness to the others. What exactly does openness to somebody else means? It means sincerely seeking union with the others. Seeing their value, their worth, their beauty as they are, not as I want them to be, but as they are. And then I search for what is good for them, what is best for them. And in number 94, the Pope says, only by cultivating this way of relating to one another will we make possible a social friendship that excludes no one and a fraternity that is open to all. I find number 94 a good description of that universal love. Relating with one another, a social friendship, no one is excluded, and a fraternity, sorority that is open to all. And from there, we find the parable of the Good Samaritan, someone who exhibits to us universal love towards a wounded person, a stranger, someone that he did not know, but it doesn't matter. The Samaritan stopped, came close, and the stranger was no longer a stranger, but a brother. And he gave to that unknown brother the caring that he could have given to anyone that he had known. And he went the extra mile, carrying the person to an inn, engaging the innkeeper to care, to show also the caring, to show to that wounded person the caring.
Cannot hear you.
Hello?
I think it's okay, Your Eminence. You can continue. Please unmute your mics, please. Somebody is having his mic on and it is interfering with what the Cardinal is saying. Please unmute your mics. Your Eminence, now it's okay.
Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear? Yeah. So the Holy Father presents the Good Samaritan as a model of this universal love, who sees a stranger and does not treat him as a stranger anymore, no, but as a brother. And then by bringing the wounded person to an inn, this Samaritan invited the innkeeper to participate in universal love. And the Samaritan even used his resources and promised to pay more if the expenses would exceed, what he had given. So we are familiar with the parable of the Good Samaritan, but we see the Holy Father's new insights into that. So this is the first thing that I would like to share in a nutshell. Pardon of Pope Francis for oversimplifying, but this is universal love. The second point that I read through love, fraternity, universal fraternity, could easily become it could end up being a slogan, and everyone invoking universal love, universal peace, universal justice, etc. And when I remember someone saying, I love all of humanity. It is human beings that I hate. It is easy to love a concept, humanity, but when it comes to concrete human beings, well, let us see. Will you exercise universal love? I saw how the Holy Father was trying to prevent that. That's why in all the succeeding chapters, you see his attempt to maintain the dynamic relationship and even tension between loving friendship with a concrete human being and the recognition of human beings. Those two must happen together. Also, his stress on local cultures. Local cultures, local communities cannot be dismissed. We all belong to the local, but the local that is always open to universal solidarity. There is no real, true, authentic universal solidarity without the local cultures that make up that solidarity. Religious identity. The Holy Father says, if you engage in dialogue, you must also know your identity. So it is not denied. But your religious identity is secure, you know it, and so you are open to dialogue, to interreligious dialogue. Then we have national politics. Every nation is entitled to its own political system and policies. But the national politics must lead to international political charity, international relations. So we could see here, I hope I am right, the Holy Father doesn't want universal love, universal fraternity to float in the air and become again one of the many slogans that people will use, but then emptied because lacking in concreteness. So he always brings together the concrete person and universal rights and dignity. local cultures, and universal solidarity, religious affiliation and identity, and interreligious dialogue, national politics, and international relations based on political charity. And we need both the local, the specific, the individual, open to the others. And the Holy Father says this dynamic tension will happen only in personal encounters. When we meet concrete individuals, when we encounter concrete communities where they are, when we meet cultures. And this meeting should be in the spirit of openness, of mutual learning, and seeking what is good in the other. Hopefully, through this culture of encounter, real meetings of cultures, of peoples, of individuals, of mentalities, of religions. In this culture of meetings and seeking for consensus, we will find a better politics, a better way of doing politics or engaging in politics. We would hope to find a better way of dealing with the economy, the worldwide economy. We will find a better way of establishing cultural, national friendships, especially ways of resolving conflicts. And all of this leading to the common good, the good of all, which in the end will benefit the individual good, the good of every culture, and the good of every country, and vice versa. So I picked up this element because you know it is always easy to fall into the trap. Whenever you see the word universal, then there is the flight into some unknown. No, but I think the Holy Father wants to maintain that concreteness of the universal. The universal is found in the concrete individual persons, communities, and cultures. Monsignor Pierre, 5 more minutes. Now I go to my last point. What are some lessons that we can get from Fratelli Tutti? What lessons for Caritas? I'm sure there are many, but let me identify a few. The first lesson is, for me, is to join the Holy Father in being sensitive to the signs of closing of hearts, of hands, of hearts, of minds, of territories, of cultures. Because these signs are very subtle. Sometimes we don't even notice that they are leading us to being closed and individualistic. I think Fratelli Tutti is asking us, open your eyes, be sensitive, be discerning to those so-called threats to universal openness. The second is, I think this is very much in line with what we as a confederation have already been proposing. Universal love, lived concretely, requires the formation of the heart. We all need to be purified in our loving. the presumption is we all know how to love. But as weak and sinful human beings, our loving is also wounded. I think part of the call of Caritas for the formation of the heart is for us to confront the blocks, the hindrances present in our own hearts, hindrances to true friendship and love, like confronting our prejudices, confronting our cultural biases, and opening ourselves to the gospel so that our love could be purified towards universal love. And we hope in Caritas, this formation of the heart could also lead to the formation of the institutional heart, the confederational heart that always beats with love for everyone. And so a review also of our policies, our institutional ways that might need some purification so that love, universal love, could really flow. And when this happens, individually and as a confederation, institutionally, then people will know this is the church. This is Caritas at the heart of the church. This is what Catholic identity is. As the Holy Father says, not just in some acts of service, but in the love that motivates our actions. It is easy to give a bag of food to someone, no? Even without love. But people sense that. And so it is in the sincerity of our loving that people will get to know the church too. The third lesson that I see for Caritas is, since we are a confederation coming from different countries, more than 100 countries, serving people from different countries, I think what the Holy Father says is very applicable, very much applicable to us. Like within the Confederation and in our service of peoples, respecting cultures, the cultures of the people that we work with, and respecting the cultures of the people that we serve. So respecting the cultures of the members of our confederation and respecting the cultures of the people that we serve outside of our country. Respecting them, knowing that they have their talents and their resources, developing their strengths. And in our act of service, not to make them feel that they are inferior, that we are the only bearers of the good, and which would make them more dependent on us. Our way of working together must reflect that this idea that each one could give, but each one could also learn from the other. And we promote the good of the others as they are, and everyone open to be taught also by the others. This is universal love. And the fourth, I think Caritas already has many experiences of universal love. And may I make a suggestion? can we compile stories of universal love, stories that come from the experience of Caritas, our stories that will serve as living commentaries to Fratelli Tutti, and our stories that will confirm the teachings of Fratelli Tutti. There are many theologians and many experts who will, I'm sure, write and talk about, Fratelli Tutti and provide clear and beautiful commentaries. But I remember the stories of our Caritas volunteers. I remember the stories, and I've seen the selflessness of our Caritas people, and they confirm Fratelli Tutti. Could we gather those stories and almost say, give them like a collection of stories, Fratelli Tutti, the Caritas experience. And this compilation, I think, will give hope. Will give hope. Will give hope. We will affirm that universal love is true. It exists. There are always threats to it. It is fragile, but it is true. We have seen it. We have heard it. We have experienced it. And in this moment of pandemic, universal emergency, we need universal love. Universal love. And I believe Caritas could contribute, especially through our lived experience. We have also some faults, we have committed mistakes, etc. But we, I think, also have a treasure, and let that treasure be shared. It will be Fratelli Tutti as experienced by Caritas. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence. This is wonderful. You started by inviting us to read, meditate, and pray with Fratelli Tutti, and you have helped us. So it seems that you have been able to read it for us, and you did it in a very concrete way. The tone of the encyclical is already very concrete, but you have made it even more concrete for all of us to be able to understand the meaning of this universal love, which needs to be concrete, which does not have to remain a slogan, but it has to be concrete and translate into our life, change and shape our culture, and promote. And I like very much the way you put it when you say that all this needs the formation of our heart and the purification. So the heart of all of us as individuals, but also the heart of our institution, of our confederation. And the call to maybe compile stories, because this is already happening, but we need to continue the journey, and we need to continue to move forward. I like very much this invitation to collect stories and to show that true love exists. True love is possible. So thank you very much for that, Your Eminence. And since you told that you may not be able to remain with us for until the end of the webinar, I'm proposing to take maybe 10 minutes and give the audience the possibility to make a comment or to ask a question, so that you can leave anytime when you are.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, I'm now turning to the audience and ask you, brothers and sisters, to ask questions, to make comments, following what His Eminence has presented to us in making this encyclical even more concrete for us, and helping us to to continue engaging concretely in building up this fraternal, universal love, which is possible only through openness and mutual learning. So the floor is open to anybody who would like to ask a question or to make a comment.
Thank you, Pierre. I was asked by the animator to switch my micro on, and maybe this is related to the reflection I put on the conversation room. I want to thank very much our Cardinal for the points he stressed, which are, in my view, absolutely key in the encyclical. But I was a little bit surprised that in the many commenters I heard until now, almost nobody raised an issue which, in my view, is important along the Assisi spirit of that religious dialogue. It seems to me the Pope even went one step further. It is even not restricted to ecumenism, but it goes very far in the dialogue with Islam, which is a very courageous stance nowadays, because for many Christians, Islam is seen as a threat, and we always associate Islam with Islamic extremism, which is not representative of Islam. And I was wondering, President, if you endorse this view of mine.
Yeah, maybe we can take two more questions or comment. That is the question asked by Patrick related to our conception and our reaction towards Islam.
Yeah, because the line got choppy, so I did not get the whole. Monsignor Pierre, could you summarize what Patrick asked?
Yes, Patrick was referring to our attitudes towards Islam.
Islam. Okay.
Yes. Well, this universal love is also an invitation to. You even mentioned it, your eminence, when you spoke about even interreligious dialogue, etc. Love is also entails that we are open to even that religion, but also interreligious. So he's asking if you, well, I think you mentioned it, but I think he wanted to hear more about it. We take two more questions, yeah. Are there any other question, please, from the audience?
Yeah, thank you. Hello, it's Christine from CAFOD in England and Wales. And greetings to all of you. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Your Eminence Cardinal Tagle. That was really great and really appreciate it. It is an extremely deep and rich document that merits a lot more time and efforts put into it. And I really value your focus on love. And I wanted to also reflect that from my reading that Pope Francis challenges us to love one another as individuals, but he also throws down an extremely strong challenge to our societies. I believe in my reading of it so far, that he's asking for a new politics, and he's asking us to engage as Catholics in the political reality of our countries. And whilst there would be probably some challenges for Caritas Internationalis as a whole confederation to engage in advocacy perhaps, but I think for each of us and our own advocacy and our own lobbying and our own influencing of politicians, it's really critical. So I'd really like you to perhaps reflect a little bit on that and encourage us all to take heart and to take strength in engaging with our political realities, because it isn't very easy at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah.
A last question, one more question, then we give the floor to the Cardinal.
Yes, Zan from Ghana.
Please go ahead, Zan.
So I put my question in the chat box. I basically had a question around how Fratelli Tutti might help us to rethink, especially the way parish life is organized, and by extension also the service of charity. And perhaps if it is different in Europe and elsewhere, but in Africa, you see, parish life is really so much structured around power, you know, from the parish priest, from the parish council, and you really have to belong to a structure before you can be counted. So my question is, how will Fratelli Tutti influence a rethink of the way our parish life is organized? And by extension, Caritas, but he has said a lot already about Caritas.
Yes, thank you. We can stop there. Your Eminence, you have those three questions, and I give the floor to you to respond.
But thanks to the beautiful questions, I think I would need another hour to respond to all of them. But but no, just to share some insights regarding Patrick's question about especially Islam. You know, I think here Caritas could really help also based on our experience. You know, I think Patrick made a very good observation that in the minds, especially of some Christians, I think it has also been shaped by a certain way of reporting the news, etc., and the repetition of Islamic terrorists. If you hear that many times a day, in your mind, you would associate the two words, terrorism and Islam, when in fact, Islam as a religion, as a way of life, you know, is not to be equated with some people who engage in violence using a religious shield or even the name of God, you know, to legitimize a certain action. And so I think it is part of our task, not only in Caritas, but also as a church, to help dismantle all these false labels. In this case, related to Islam, but in other religions. And unfortunately, Christianity also suffers from that. We are also labeled in a certain way. And so part, I think, of Fratelli Tutti is that make us prejudge not only individuals, but the whole religion. Of Islam. Hello?
Yeah. Hello, Your Eminence. You go ahead, please.
Yeah.
We lost you.
As I said, no, the Holy Father stresses personal encounter. I've met some Christians who are so afraid of Islam, but have not met a single Muslim. And so we have a lot to do also in terms of purifying from our side all these prejudices. No, it's unfair for any religion, in this case Islam, to be branded as terrorists when it is the work of just a few. You know? Secondly, regarding the new politics, yeah, and the engagement that the church is being asked to do in advocating the new politics based on a renewed society, the common good. No, yeah, I think here Caritas can play a very good role because I'm sorry to say this, but this is just my observation. And Fratelli Tutti mentioned it. The way we see politics developing in the world and more intensely in some parts of the world is the misuse of even the term people, and therefore popular, you know. So it leads to this populist type of approach that pretends to be at the service of the people, but in fact, it is building a wall, no, and dividing even the same country that they are serving. And so even in one country, you have people who are not treating each other as brothers and sisters anymore, but enemies. Those who do not belong to my political party are enemies. Things like those, no? And here, I think Caritas could help purify politics precisely by showing that we are not party to that destructive type of partisanship. Our politics is that of communion, and we could be prophetic in raising questions to all political parties. I think this is the key. If Caritas is identified with only one party, then we will be what do you call this? Branded as a tool, an instrument of one ideological group. But our prophetism should reach all and should touch all, so that we help purify all, in terms of service of the common good. So that is a political engagement, engaging all the parties. And finally, wow, how Fratelli Tutti could help in the restructuring or the rethinking and restructuring of parish life. Yeah, first of all, Father Sam already mentioned some of the existing bodies of participation and consultation, and they could be signs of this mutual respect and working, But if you look at a regular parish, very often those who get nominated or appointed or elected to those consultative bodies, they usually come from a certain bracket, a bracket of the parish community, And so I think one challenge is, let us review the membership of those consultative bodies, the pastoral council, the educational board. Are these councils, is the membership reflective of the universal love and interests present in the parish? Secondly, I think we are invited to develop what, for example, in Latin America, they call the comunidades de base, the neighborhood communities, so that consultation and participation does not happen only in the constituted commissions and committees, but right there where they live their daily lives, where they encounter their joys and pains, and there they are given a channel, a voice to the life of the parish. And finally, I don't know how many parishes engage in inter-religious dialogue. very often the concept of pastoral life is we take care of our flock. We take care of our sheep. No? But part of the service of charity, part of evangelization is for the whole parish, territorial parish, or even a personal parish, to look beyond its own members and to get engaged in the pains and the sorrows and the joys of non-Christians or non-Catholics. And then the political engagement will also enter as part of advocacy. So I'm pretty sure if pastors will take Fratelli Tutti seriously, the face of their consultative bodies and their methods would also somehow be transformed.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence, and I'm sure we will hear you on this again in the near future. So we thank you very much for your insight. And now, yes, we are happy if you continue to remain with us. But if you are obliged to go, we will all understand.
Yeah.
Now,
I will let me thank everyone now, and I will quietly disappear when needed. Father Augusto, it doesn't mean I am not interested in your talk, but it's just that I have to go to another meeting.
thank you very much, Your Eminence. Now, let us move on. And I start by saying that, well, we know the mission of the Church of Caritas. The mission of Caritas is rooted in the Catholic social teaching. And this teaching is not static, it is dynamic. And so from Laudato Si to Fratelli Tutti, what is the actuality of the Catholic social teaching and the vision of Pope Francis as it appears in Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti, two encyclicals which are interlinked? We have asked Monsignor Augusto Zampini to elaborate on that for us. He is, as you all know, the adjunct secretary of the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. He knows very well Caritas because before being called to Rome, he was working with CAFOD, one of our members from England in Wales. Augusto, thank you for accepting our invitation. You have the floor for 20 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Monsignor Pierre. And don't worry, Cardinal Tagle. I'm used to cardinals running away when I speak, so don't worry. And thank you also to Aloysius and for the invitation and for all of you for inviting me to be with you. So I would like to provide a view from the Catholic social teaching perspective of Fratelli Tutti, and perhaps a vision from Laudato Si to Fratelli Tutti. And I would like to start with how do we, reminding ourselves, how did we begin the 21st century with a financial meltdown in 2007, 2008, and the church responded to that with Caritas in Veritate in 2009 with a document, reading the signs of the time, discerning and providing some thoughts and lines of action. Then the climate breakdown that was already there, but now it has become like unsustainable, and the church responding with Laudato Si in 2015. And now we have realized that we can neither address the financial or economic crisis nor the climate breakdown if we don't if we are not united as a human family. And COVID-19 has revealed that what we call the COVID lockdown has revealed our incapacity to address global issues in a global way, meaning in a fraternal, in a united way. But that's why Pope Francis, one of the reasons Pope Francis issued the Encyclical Fratelli Tutti. So you can see that Catholic social teaching, although for most of you it's obvious, is always trying to respond to the signs of the times. And it comes as no surprise that in the Pope Francis magisterium, so and based on or inspired by Saint Francis of Assisi, that is the saint of fraternal openness, love, and peace, as Cardinal Tagle was suggesting that Fratelli Tutti is all about that. But Pope Francis' magisterium is all about how can we be united as a church, united with all creation, and united with all communities, including other communities. So, so that's why you can see this inspired trilogy by Saint Francis of Assisi and Francis of Rome, the Bishop of Rome, issuing his three main documents. Not because the others are not important, but the others are like an extension or expansion of them. The first one is, remember Saint Francis of Assisi, no? Listening to God saying, "Ve e repara la mia chiesa," go and rebuild my church. And Francis of Rome issuing a document on the church. This is the way I want the church to go. Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel. Why? Because Saint Francis of Assisi thought that God was asking to repair the church, the building, and then he discovered that he meant something else, to want to repair the church, the universal community. And Pope Francis is the same, not just to repair the mistakes that we were doing as a church, for example, child abuse, the scandal, but also the entire community as a church. Where do we want to go in this world, in this time? And I think this we cannot understand the following documents without Evangelii Gaudium. Then Francis of Assisi, Laudato Si, o mi Signore, the saint who was open to understand all creatures as brothers and sisters. And Francis of Rome, the Bishop of Rome, praise be to you, my Lord, Laudato Si, o mi Signore, Laudato Si on the care for our common home. No? And then Fratelli Tutti, said Francis of Assisi, referring to all brothers and sisters, we have to forge a new universal solidarity, a new social friendship in order to address these common global problems that are unique because they are the way they have been unfolded are unique, and therefore it requires new responses. And but this is just to show how the Catholic social teaching works, the consistency of Pope Francis' magisterium. So it comes as no surprise. I remember when I was working in CAFOD, that was in 2000, even 2014. I told, when Laudato Si came out in 2015, I told them the next encyclical will be about peace and human relations. So I wasn't a prophet. It was obvious, no? It was obvious. It was the relation, repair the, well, a new model of development to care for our common home, including the poor, of course, and then new model of peace. What does it mean, new model of peace with new model of politics? But the two documents, I will talk about Laudato Si to Fratelli Tutti. They have also a consistency because they are the two latest Catholic social documents. And they have a similar structure. First, both are inspired by St. Francis of Assisi, the saint of fraternal openness, love, and simplicity, of joy and peace, who walked alongside the poor and loved all creation, both documents. Second, they both start with a quote from St. Francis of Assisi, and this is why the title is called like that, although some people were annoyed, but this was to do justice to Francis of Assisi. Third, they both end with two closing prayers. One, a very Christian prayer, and another, a more universal prayer, inviting other traditions and people of goodwill also to contemplate the beauty of creation and the beauty of humanity. And that means that the both documents also, they refer to Bishops' Conference and other documents. And this is the synodality of Pope Francis' mind included in social documents. No? It's the first social encyclicals who they don't not only are quoting previous popes, but a lot of bishops' conference involved. But both documents are unashamedly Christian. And this is regarding identity. It's very important. I want to add something that Cardinal Tagle said, although there's almost nothing else to say. But to be Christian doesn't mean to disregard other traditions, to impose our view. That was not Jesus' style. And both Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti reflect Jesus' style, which means a dialogical approach from our faith. We are not ashamed of our identity, but that means that we can dialogue with others and we can bring about good to the world. That doesn't mean that everybody has to convert to what we believe, but we have some approaches, some visions, some principles that can help. They are both humble in a way that they offer a contribution to the ongoing reflection and provide a vision for action on the way we are treating the planet, integral ecology, and each other, universal fraternity. But they don't pretend to be the solution. This is very important because otherwise it won't be a dialogical proposal. They are humble in that sense. We have something to say. It's not the solution, but this is important. And they are both following the Catholic social teaching methodology. Most of you are the people in CAFO, they are fed up of listening to me in saying this, but this is very important to understand because otherwise it's difficult to understand our own tradition. We see, as Cardinal Tagle also was emphasizing, we see or listen, we discern, and then we propose lines for action. And what does the Pope see? When in Fratelli Tutti, he sees that the deterioration and the exploitation of the environment, irrational exploitation of the environment and of humanity. No? Because this is a structural problem. It's not just individuals. Just to follow a particular development model that we need to change. No? And that's why he says we are not facing with two separate crises. Social crisis and ecological crisis, they have the same root. We need to address it together to respond to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor together. What does Fratelli Tutti see? What he sees alongside other bishops, of course, and science, he sees a world that is locked down, but not locked down because of the COVID, because we are blindfolded. We cannot see each other. We cannot see our problems. We deny. No, how many times we have heard people, very leaders, denying reality of the climate crisis, even of the COVID crisis, or of the poor, of the problem of food. So this is a problem, no? That we cannot see. So therefore, it's a dark world, and also in today's world, the sense of belonging to a single human family is fading. We thought that this was improving, no? After the World War, even after in the 60s, in the 70s, 80s, we thought that we were in the 90s after the Berlin Wall fall. We thought that we were improving as a human family, and we had some. The European Union is an example. Some attempts in South America, like the Mercosur. Some attempts in Africa. But now we realize that we are going backwards. So and we cannot afford to go backwards because we cannot have a globalized model without a globalized plan or a globalized approach. That means we are all brothers and sisters. We are all involved, because otherwise it's the rule of the most powerful. This is one of the problems that Pope Francis is seeing. And of course, the judging or the discerning is in the light of the scriptures and of our tradition. This will be very long to explain, but remember, in Laudato Si, there was a wonderful explanation of the text of the book of Genesis, no? Of that creation and the link with texts that reflects the redemption of Christ. Now, God sees that everything is good and entrusted us to care for that, to till it and care, no? To till it and keep it, not just to till it, not just to keep it, both. But also we are entrusted to do that, and Jesus also sees that everything is good, and he redeems everything as good. And at the end of the day, we will be redeemed with all creation. So our role is to start caring for that creation. Of course, human beings, because we are essential parts of this creation, but not the center. The center is God, who is the creator. So this was an excellent explanation. I don't know if you remember him saying, those who believe that the text of Genesis saying that we have to dominate the earth means we can do whatever we want is wrong. This is a very strong statement from a pope. But then that's about Laudato Si. In Fratelli Tutti, he takes the parable of the Good Samaritan, that again, people in CAFOD were very tired to listening to me speaking about it. The parable of the Good Samaritan epitomizes what means charity, what means Catholic social thought and action. But the novelty here is that he reads the parable of the Good Samaritan not as an individual who helps another individual. How wonderful is this person? Because remember that the parable of Good Samaritan was taken by other people to say terrible things, to justify neoliberalism that the Pope is condemning in the Encyclical. So he reads the parable of the Good Samaritan as an example of how we need to go beyond our barriers, because we need to understand that we are already connected. We are already brothers and sisters. That's why at the end of the parable, the question is, who do you believe has behaved as neighbor? No, who is my neighbor? For Caritas, this is extremely important. Why? Because if Aloysius is my neighbor, that means that Aloysius, I objectivize my neighbor, I have to help him. So he's as we can do with our people, with our partners overseas. But if I behave as neighbor, it's different, because we are already neighbors, I have to behave as neighbor. So it's a matter of justice to our relationship. I'm not the goodie, as Cardinal Tagle was suggesting, for our people, particularly living in poverty. We are already neighbors. So who is behaving as neighbor is the key to promote universal fraternity or solidarity. And of course, the discerning has also a positive thing. Laudato Si is integral ecology. What does it mean, integral ecology? It means many, of course, social and ecological issues together. But look at these wonderful texts. An integral ecology is inseparable from the notion of the common good. A central and unifying principle of social ethics. The common good is the sum of those conditions of social life which allow social groups and their individual members. Look at the social groups and their individual members, not the other way around. Relatively through and ready access to their own fulfillment. And then he says in another paragraph, an integral ecology includes taking time to recover a serene harmony with creation, reflecting on our lifestyles and our ideals, and contemplating the Creator who lives among us and around and surround us, whose presence must not be contrived but found and uncovered. Why is he saying that? Because if we don't find the presence of God through the creatures that are reflecting something of the divinity, we cannot take care of them. So this is important. This is very, very important. So common good and the wonderful of each creature that is reflecting something of God. This is what drives an integral ecological approach and to care for everybody, social and society and nature. And then in Fratelli Tutti, look at this wonderful text as again, because the discerning is an open and fraternal world. Life, for all its confrontations, is the art of encounter. It's an art, because it's an art that we need to learn. We cannot assume, as Cardinal Tagle was saying, that we know how to encounter other people. We know that because every time we prepare a meeting, we assume that we know how the meeting will go. We are not very good when we do that. So Pope Francis continues and says, I have frequently called for the growth of a culture of encounter, capable, and a culture of encounter that he mentioned in Evangelii Gaudium, by the way, capable of transcending our differences and divisions. This means working to create a many-faceted polyhedron whose different sides from a very dated unity is which the whole is greater than the part. So we need to go back to Evangelii Gaudium to understand this. But basically, we need to reach out. We a church who reaches out, and we are part of this polyhedron of the world. And then he says, kindness frees us from the cruelty that times infects human relationships. Infects. This is a very important word now in COVID times. No? Cruelty, individualism are also viruses that we need to cure. Precisely because entail esteem and respect for others, one's kindness becomes a culture within society and can transform life. And how wonderful it would be if we can put that in our Caritas network and in our church in general. And then the lines for action, in a nutshell, you know them, but in a nutshell, I will synthesize. Laudato Si proposes socioeconomic, education, and spiritual lines for action. And he proposed a prophetic development model, a new model of development that is not just to amass fortune or to grow materially, but it's a holistic model of development that can change, that can provide good change for the caring of our common home. In Fratelli Tutti, he proposed universal love in politics that he mentioned already in Laudato Si, but he expands it. Love is not just a love between individuals or between my friends or my group or my parish or my family. Love is political, and it's one of the highest expressions of love, of charity, because it can promote the common good more directly or not. And love in politics, in cultures, and also in religions, because religions can be a great source for good or also for war in the name of religion. No? So he's proposing prophetic political models. Yes, 5 minutes. Okay. Prophetic political models for actions, particularly a new model of multilateralism in politics. But with remember that both encyclicals are unashamedly Christians. So with the proposal of interreligious dialogue as a source for this new world, for this new politics. That's very, very interesting, particularly for those we are shy to say that our faith has to say something to politics. But that doesn't mean that we need to go to ideological approach of faith in politics, because this is why the social encyclical tried to respond to a social crisis today, how to bring the message of life now in this world. And what do we see in this world? These connected crises, no? The environmental, the social, the ecological, but they all have the same roots: extractivist and technocratic mentality. We take away and we think that we can fix it technologically. Then we throw away and we consume and throw away. And in the middle, we are indifferent from people suffering. So how can we help? And this is translated into politics. Neoliberalism that is running out of ideas is the corruption of the freedom, of the liberty of the person. And populism, which is the corruption of the people, of our social dimension. And therefore, we are in this globalized, unjust society. So what can we do to help? We can propose a culture of appreciation instead of depreciation. This is the culture of encounter that the Pope is proposing. It means value creation mentality, not extractive mentality. We can take the 5 Ps of the preamble of Paris Agreement of the Sustainable Development Goals. For all people, inclusive prosperity, in partnership, taking care of the planet, that will provide peace. That is a prosperity that can achieve peace. And a culture of care and service. But look at the middle. In the middle, you have new universal solidarity, starting with religions. That I'm glad that somebody raised this up. Because my time is up, this is the last slide. What both Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti are proposing is a dream, but a biblical dream, not a wish. A biblical dream is like St. Joseph's dream. Remember, he dreamed and he woke up, boom, and he did it. he took care of the Holy Family. So a dream in what? A dream in a more sustainable and inclusive world, Laudato Si, and a dream in a more united and amicable world, Fratelli Tutti, social friendship. And I will end up, and we don't have to fear of dreaming this, but I will end up with another joke with Querida Amazonia. a phrase from Querida Amazonia. You can find there at the bottom of the screen that it says, everything that the church has to offer, everything, not some things, everything, especially charity, of course, must become incarnate in a distinctive way in each part of the world. And I want to put that quote because I think that's what Caritas does. In each part of the world, incarnate God's love. But because I am, well, of course we are related with Caritas and my heart is Caritas. I used to work with Caritas. But now I work in the Dicastery for Development. That is the aspects of hope. No? Charity, both are based on faith, but you are based more in charity, as Cardinal Tagle was saying. Our Dicastery is based more in hope. The Pope in Fratelli Tutti says that hope is bold. This is bold because it can look beyond personal convenience. No, it can go beyond short-termism, short sights, and can dream big in doing something good for the common good, to have healthy people, healthy institutions, healthy politics, and a healthy planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Augusto, for for this very concrete presentation, helping us to understand Catholic social teaching today. And yeah, because this is very important for us. We are Caritas. We have a mission, and this mission, if we want to fulfill it properly, we have to understand that well. We have to have this very powerful roots in the Catholic social teaching. Yeah, because yeah, we are in face of crisis, and the way we respond to those crises is what Francis is clearly indicating to us today in these two very powerful encyclicals. So that is why we said at the beginning that they are interlinked. You know. Thank you very much for that. We will now give the floor to Aloysius to make the last presentation before we can then take some few minutes to make comments and to ask questions. Well, you know, charity is concrete. It is concrete. And how we turn the words of Fratelli Tutti into action within our confederation to respond to the human suffering and to work for justice and human rights, to connect people and communities and contribute to the promotion of integral human development is our challenge today. Because that is what we stand for at Caritas International. So we really feel energized by Fratelli Tutti and, well, Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. We feel energized. And for that reason, as we have asked Aloysius, our Secretary General, to share with us his reading of Fratelli Tutti and how this support and at the same time challenge our work and the way we work today. So, Aloysius, we give you, well, between 10 and 20 minutes so to make your presentation, and then we will spend some time for sharing reflection and comments and the end.
Thank you. Thank you, Monsignor Pierre. So between 10 and 20 minutes, I will take 15 minutes then to make an average. Yeah. First of all, this is an important opportunity for me because the exercise which was given to me, or the homework which was given to me, was to transform Fratelli Tutti into action, into translating charity into concrete work for Caritas. So this was quite an interesting experience for me, and also an interesting, I would say, moment of learning for me. This encyclical contains very concrete lessons and direction for the mission of Caritas to promote universal love. And today we have a very good reflection on universal love given by our president, Cardinal Tagle. And at this moment, when we met in March, the Pope one of the things he said is universal love at this moment is important when the pandemic is general and it's a global problem. We need to promote universal love. That was his point. And it was not so clear for me, but in the encyclical today, it is clarified. So this universal love is especially needed at the moment when the sense of belongingness to a single human family is fading, especially in a context where coronavirus has made us aware of our common belongingness to humanity. Pope Francis leads us through a contemplation on building a new society based on globalization of solidarity founded on justice and faith in the human person. This is something which is very interesting, which transpires in the encyclical. His message has implications for every aspect of our lives, even personal lives, including our personal relationship, and how to contribute to organize our societies and economies as Caritas. This encyclical gives us a vision for action and also for shaping our attitude as Caritas. Fratelli Tutti has a certain number of direct implications for Caritas. In the reflection led by Pope Francis, we can see a clear framework for the work of Caritas Internationalis strategic framework. In its mission of promoting the charity of church and globalizing solidarity in the world of selfishness and indifferences, Caritas can draw a certain number of guidelines from this encyclical. At this exceptional historical moment when COVID-19 has destabilized and deregulated the established order, Pope Francis emphasizes that classical response is not enough, and we must react differently. It calls for a new social order built on fraternity. This encyclical gives us an clear orientation on how we could adapt our strategic framework also in order to respond to this, to what Pope Francis is giving us as lessons. Thus, in analyzing the condition in our today's world, Pope Francis gives us a powerful and urgent vision for the moral renewal of social, political, and economical institutions. I was listening to what Christine said about advocacy. That's where we see Pope Francis leading us to. How do we address these issues at the political level? Through his contemplation on the present-day situation of the postmodern society, Pope Francis is calling us to build a common future that serves with love the good of the human person. Caritas, as a social arm of the church, is the first concerned and called to be actor in this area of renewal and transformation. This resonates with our first orientation of upholding Caritas identity. Our modern society, as Pope Francis says, is wounded. The poor, the migrants, unemployed youth, the most vulnerable, the displaced characterize the wounds of the modern society. At the time when war and violence, abject poverty is rendering human suffering banal, and the world is turning an indifferent regard to these sufferings of the brothers and sisters, the message of the Holy Father is a call for immediate action with commitment. The Holy Father, referring to the parable of the Good Samaritan, raises a certain number of challenges which are very relevant for Caritas. He questions our attitude towards the suffering of those who are left on the wayside in total indifference. Through his reflection based on see, judge, and act, he leads us through a contemplation of the parable. 3 passers-by, 1 victim, 3 thieves, the thieves, and the 3 attitudes with those who 3 attitudes before the suffering in an environment of freedom. Where are we in our day-to-day encounter with those who are wounded and left on the wayside of the society? How do we manifest our compassion? Are we ready to stoop down to the perspective of the poor? Does the human suffering touch each and every one of us? Does it condition our work, our mission? And being touched by the wounds, does it transform our attitudes as members of Caritas? He brings to evidence in all these reflections the failure to care of the two and exalts the unconditional love the universal love expressed by the Samaritan. Through this parable, Caritas is called to reflect and get back to the core values, that is, faith in the brotherhood of humanity and in building social solidarity. And as the Holy Father says, we must put human dignity back at the center, and on the pillar, build the alternative social structures we need. Paragraph 142. At the height of the COVID-19 global pandemic, this message is a real challenge for our Confederation, and we want to reflect on how we want to respond to this call. Another implication will be how we want to develop fraternal cooperation within the Confederation. COVID-19 is going to bring us to a new start. What should we do together to put human dignity back at the center and build a society where justice will prevail and the poor taking their responsibility? As Monsignor Augusto said, a vision that promotes universal love. As Caritas, the mission entrusted is clear. We need to be inventive and creative in the exercise of the work of charity. Old solutions are no more valid for the new emerging problems. We are called to mobilize the moral energy that springs to include the excluded in the building of a common destiny, while also ensuring that these experiences of solidarity, which grow up from below, from the subsoil of the planet, can come together, be more coordinated, keep on meeting one another. That's Fratelli Tutti, paragraph number 143. Pope Francis emphasizes the importance of people-oriented bottom-up development, wherein the poor are empowered to take their destiny into their own hands. The poor must be invited to become part of the community with their rights and duties. In our modern society, where the poor are not recognized, fight against poverty calls in the first place to empower and give dignity to the poorest. This is a basic right and can be achieved only through creating conditions for them to earn their lives in dignity. The Holy Father says, there is no poverty worse than that which takes away work and the dignity of the work. Paragraph 137. In a genuinely developed society, work is an essential dimension of social life, for it is not only a means of earning one's daily bread, but also of a personal growth, the building of healthy relationship, self-expression, and the exchange of gifts. Work gives us a sense of shared responsibility for the development of the world and ultimately for our life as a people. In addressing the issues of poverty, Pope Francis calls us to adopt a visionary approach and not just an emotional response to the immediate needs. He says, it is an equally indispensable act of love to strive to organize and structure society so that one's neighbor will not find himself in poverty. It is an act of charity to assist someone suffering, but it is also an act of charity, even if you do not know that person, to work to change the social condition that caused his or her suffering. Charity, when accompanied by a commitment to the truth, is much more than personal feeling, and consequently need not fall prey to contingent subjective emotions and opinion. Paragraph 176. Here, reference is made to how we are ready to create conducive environment by addressing the root causes of poverty in order to ensure sustainable, integral, long-term development. The respect of fundamental human rights is a basic condition for promoting the integral development of the human person. There, Pope Francis calls us for an urgent need to combat all that threatens or violates the fundamental human rights. Politicians are called to tend to the needs of the individuals and people. To tend those in need takes strength and tenderness, effort and generosity in the midst of a functionalistic and privatized mindset that inexorably leads to a throwaway culture. Here, the importance of unconditional love for the poor is underlined. Loving the most insignificant of human beings as a brother, as if there were no one else in the world but him, cannot be considered a waste of time. 190. The importance of active charity to denounce the cause is underlined here. The direct implication for Caritas is, how are we going to define our advocacy work? Will it change? How do we ensure that the rights of the poor are appropriately addressed? Addressing issues related to injustice and unjust systems demands a decisive commitment to devise effective means to this end. Any effort along these lines becomes a noble exercise of charity. For whereas individuals can help others in need when they join together in initiating social process of fraternity and justice for all, they enter the field of charity at its most vast, namely political charity. This entails working for a social and political order whose soul is social charity, that is paragraph number 166. Once more, I appeal for a renewed appreciation of politics as a lofty vocation and one of the highest forms of charity, inasmuch as it seeks the common good, that is paragraph 167 from Fratelli Tutti. There is also a commanded love expressed in those acts of charity that spur people to create more sound institutions, more just regulations, more supportive structures. It follows that it is an equally indispensable act of love to strive to organize and structure society so that one's neighbor will not find himself in poverty. Again, Pope Francis calls us for a renewed attitude towards advocacy. It is an act of charity to assist someone suffering, but it is also an act of charity, even if you do not know that person, to work to change the social conditions that cause his or her sufferings. It makes us realize that the scandal of poverty cannot be addressed by promoting strategies of containment that only tranquilizes the poor and render them tame and inoffensive. Here, Pope Francis is referring to how liberative could the work of charity should be and how we have to engage in that. Here he says, how sad it is when we find behind allegedly altruistic work, the other being reduced to passivity. That is paragraph 184. So Caritas, through its social mission, can contribute to promote dialogue between people at the grassroots level through the different development projects. At a time when various forms of fundamentalist intolerances are damaging relationship between individuals, groups, and peoples, let us be committed to living and teaching the value of respect for others, a love capable of welcoming differences, and the priority of the dignity of every human being over his or her ideas, opinions, and practices. Caritas present in the parishes and in the local communities must spread the culture of tolerance and of living together in peace, to intervene at the earliest opportunity to stop the shedding of innocent blood. Pope Francis argues for a social outlook rooted in solidarity that finds concrete expression in service, which can take a variety of form, in an effort to care for the others, and is born of consciousness that we are responsible for the fragility of the others as we strive to build a common future. Paragraph 115. Caritas is an experience of love shared and given to the least as a mission received from the church. It is an experience of communion with the poor, an experience of communion between women and men of goodwill. It is communion that takes its root from the truth of the gospel. This experience of communion is based on trust in God, trust in the others, and above all, trust that the poor can stand up in dignity. This makes us all brothers and sisters in faith, belonging to one human family and sharing a common home that God has given us. This is precisely what Pope Francis is asking us to undertake as a mission to move forward in this post-COVID-19 context. Charity is at the heart of every healthy and open society, yet today it is easily dismissed as irrelevant for interpreting and giving direction to moral responsibility. That is paragraph 175. Charity, when accompanied by a commitment to the truth, is much more than personal feeling and consequently need not fall prey to contingent subjective emotions and opinions. Paragraph 176. As a word of conclusion, I wish to refer to what Cardinal Tagle said. Universal love is the others to build a community of brotherhood, brothers and sisters, with the formation of hearts. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Aloysius. Well, Cardinal Tagle started his presentation by inviting all of us to read Fratelli Tutti, and it seems that you have already done that, and thank you for sharing with us what you have captured from this very important document. We still have 20 minutes to go. So I want to open immediately the floor and give all of you the possibility to make comments and ask questions, as to how we can, how we need to own this this encyclical and work with it, pray with it, meditate it, and grow in our mission of serving out of love. So the floor is open. You can ask questions to the presenters. You can make also your own comment to deepen our understanding of this encyclical. And
Monsignor Pierre.
Yes, please.
Monsignor. Yeah. Thank you for giving me the chance. I have two comments, not questions. The first one is, I see a big challenge that respecting culture, preferences, knowledge of people we serve is still a big challenge. And for that, I think we need formation of heart. And we need good formation, because that is a big lacking, where we don't see this kind of respect of our own people who are serving. This is one point. And another point is that inclusion within the church or within the wall is still our agenda. But how about inclusion outside the wall? Because as Holy Father Pope Francis invite us to be saint, so that people will feel comfort from us. But I think that we need to go beyond the wall. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very important comments. In fact, well, the whole concept of culture and the respect for the culture of those whom we serve is of course important. And fraternal love, universal love means that, we are promoting inclusion and not exclusion. So thank you very much, Dr. Alo, for those comments. The floor is open, and whoever wants to take to say something should present him or herself first. Thank you. Are you there? Are we still together? Yeah. We don't.
We can't hear you. I don't know who's speaking. We can't hear you.
Hello?
Hello?
Am I on?
Who is speaking, please?
My name is Fusiaba Banahene.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm concerned about, I joined it late, but I'm concerned about how we can initiate the construction of a global framework that will be able to act in the event that we're going to have crisis in the future, so that we're not taking unawares and begin to prepare again. There will be a structure on the ground so that when there is a crisis, we'll be able to activate what we have already put on the ground to be able to tackle the menace.
I didn't understand, but we are having some difficulties here. We are trying to fix our, yeah.
Yes, do you hear me
Are
now?
you able to repeat what the question, please, so that we can,
Do you hear me now?
or the comment, because it is not necessarily a question, it is a comment. And
do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, it was a question for all of us. I am grappling with it myself. But I wanted to find out how, we can initiate a process that will be able to put in place a global framework of readiness to tackle future crises like this one. This one took us unawares. It was already with us when we were trying to see what to do. But if you have something on the ground already in the future, we will be able to activate it so that it would not destroy us before we start getting to it. I appreciate the individual efforts countrywide, but pandemic of this nature requires a global framework to deal with it, a kind of readiness. I don't know how we can construct that, but it will need a campaign, a serious campaign to bring everybody on board, especially those whose voices count in society.
Yeah, thank you very much for the for that comment, which is also a question addressed to all of us, and I think it is a good question for us as a confederation. Maybe, yeah, this is something we need to think about, and there is an ongoing process which is of reflection as to how we as Caritas we project ourselves in the years to come. And maybe this is something which can, be fed into the process of reflection. Yeah, how do we want to be a Caritas? How do we want to be a confederation in the world today? And which contribution do we think we can offer in building up this process of putting in place a global framework to address the crisis and to get prepared? I think that is a very important dimension, I believe.
Monsignor Pierre.
Yes, please.
Zan here. Let me tag on quickly. I'm just wondering, since we are reflecting on Fratelli Tutti, I think around chapter 4 or so, when Pope Francis picks up the UN framework, I think he makes a proposition for a kind of international fund. Since Father Zampini is still there, could you speak about this in relation to the question that Banahine is asking? Is that the kind of thing that Pope Francis had in mind? He makes a proposition of a kind of global fund that will address issues like this in Fratelli Tutti. I think it's chapter 4 or so where he picks on the UN. Is Father Zampini still with us? No.
The Global Fund is most welcome. It has been done. This is not the first time. I think in Popularum Progressio, the Pope called for a World Fund like that. But when we have the fund and the people are not prepared on the ground, the fund cannot do the work. We need to have a global conscience that is found in the structural framework, which will be able to be activated in the moment of the crisis, so that we can all know what to do. This is not there. And this is what I'm trying to bring our minds to that. This may not be the last pandemic that we may have in the world. But posterity will ask us that we had the experience. Why didn't we put in place a structure that would be able to deal with it if it happened again? And if you have the structure on the ground, then the fund that the Pope is calling for could galvanize that. It will be able to lubricate that structure in such a way that we will be able to function effectively against the menace.
Well, Augusto, could you react to that? Because
Yes, thank you. No, that's a good comment. I think he mentions the Global Fund when he's referring to the weapons. So as some of you might know, during this time, COVID time, the investment in weapons has been really grown. I mean, I don't have the figures now, but most powerful countries have invested trillions of dollars in not just in ordinary weapons, but in nuclear weapons while we were facing a pandemic. Also, for example, in the domestic arena, for example, in the United States, people buying weapons instead of buying medicines. So what the Pope is saying is that all this money invested in weapons could be invested in a global fund for actual security. I think he was quoting already Popolón Progressio. I think it's the number 262 in Fratelli Tutti. But all this money invested in armament could be invested in a global fund so as to address this type of crisis. And that will be a better way of investing money in security than investing in weapons that we don't need, because the weapons of mass destruction that we have now, if we start using them, then we will destroy the planet in a very short time. So I think he was referring to that. But it's true what you were saying, that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the next pandemic, especially if we keep treating nature as we are treating, if we keep destroying biodiversity, etc. So are we ready for the next pandemic? Well, COVID has shown that we are not. Even the vaccine, the way the vaccine discussion, remember that the vaccine has to be available for all, at least for 70 people, 70% of the population of the world. Otherwise, it won't. We will need a new vaccine in shortly. So this requires a lot of investment. There are some initiatives or groups, but this is the initiatives that we can start advocating for. Investing money, especially if it's public money, in things that help the common good and that proper secures food and health. That are the two main important things that people are desiring. No? If you ask ordinary people on the ground, what do they want? They want food, they want health. And the two are at risk. We are risking food security. Maybe Aloysius can expand on that. And we are also risking another pandemic, and we still don't have the solution for the new pandemic. So these kind of global funds are needed, and I think he was quoting Paul VI on this regard.
Do you have any comment on that, Aloysius?
No, I was a bit outside. I did not get the question exactly, but just picking up on what Monsignor Augusto has said, Zampini has said. I think when we met Pope Francis during the meeting, there were this question of funds spent on weapons and also the debt. The debt also was another question which was raised, where the Pope Francis was saying we need to address the question of international debt in terms of social justice. Because he said today this is money stolen from the poor, from the poor nations where they have corrupt leaders. And he was very clear on that. And he said, we need to address this issue as a question of social justice. And in this in COVID-19 context, he said this becomes relevant because today people need to be accompanied, because if every individual becomes a threat for me, then we have to be together in order to help them. And the poorest must be helped with the money which belongs to them. That was one point which he was underlining during our meeting with the dicastery. Second one, the key point which he underlined was, how do we put the human person at the center? It should not be just slogan. It should not be just in words, but how do we put the human person at the center so that the person is empowered and he or she is ready to ask for his or her rights. This is another question which was also discussed and raised. And I think in this post-COVID-19 situation, this is something which we need to take into consideration. And this is where Fratelli Tutti gives us a certain number of indications and orientations, and linked with Laudato Si, which talks about the environment as such. How do we put the human person in the environment so that there is integral human development in a spirit of integral ecology? The last point for me would be, how do we empower the poorest, and how do we deal with them as the Good Samaritan, taking on board different people, and also working together with different stakeholders in order to find a solution, including the government, and what could be our advocacy work. And I think this is something which we need to address. Thank you. Jean-Pierre, Augusto, you want to say something?
All right.
Yeah,
Can I come in?
yes, please go ahead. What are you, Aka?
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
No. I am a Dupra from Ghana. It's very interesting what we're hearing today, all the speakers, and thank you very much for what you're giving us. But it's still the issue of how do you remove these discussions from the kind of intellectual level that we have now to the very to the down-to-earth situation. I've heard the discussion about the lessons for Caritas, and I thought that His Eminence point about doing stories that Caritas has done, it's also very interesting and in the same line. But is it possible that Caritas can begin to take the lead, since Caritas is in many places, a lot of parishes can begin to take the lead, even do some kind of guidelines, general guidelines that can help with the dissemination of this sort of information, not only so that it remains at the intellectual level, but also, for people to see the practical dimensions of how these things can be done, in as some lower places as like parishes and other, because if I take my own country, a lot of these things, Laudato Si, Evangelium Gaudium, all these beautiful things have remained at the intellectual level. And hardly do you get people discussing it, or even when you attempt a discussion, people hardly know about these things and how they can be applied in daily life, which is what perhaps Pope Francis is asking us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that observation. And that's right. Sorry. Someone from Cote d'Ivoire, yeah, Aka Kote has asked to talk. Could you raise your question, and then we will make a last round of reaction, and then close this webinar. Aka, are you there? Oh, I think we have lost.
I think yes, but he wrote his questions in the chat. So his question is for Aloysius John. In Laudato Si, Pope Francis told us that everything is connected. In Fratelli Tutti, that everyone is connected.
Connected.
What is your
Now,
opinion about it?
yeah, with this, which is a good resume of the two encyclicals, taking this, how can Caritas Internationalis, whose voice is so powerful, how can Caritas Internationalis help influence the current debate at the UN about the binding treaty on the TNCs? Because their activities are destroying the environment, the common house, and is affecting the people. I don't know whether it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah, Augusto, do you have last reaction, last comment before I try to conclude? Yeah.
Thank you, Pierre. Just a brief comment, a clarification and a comment. Clarification is Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti are not necessarily, I would say, an intellectual approach. It has a lot of pastoral sensitivity. You know, if you look at Fratelli Tutti, it's not a sophisticated, I mean, it is sophisticated, but it's not a theological, dense language that nobody can understand. And the same with Fratelli Tutti, the Laudato Si. But the thing I agree that this is a clarification. Now, I agree that those are not documents to read. Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti are not documents to read, are documents to live. This is a difference. And if we don't live what are documents to initiate journeys for the care of our common home and a different model of development and a conversion, an ecological conversions, journeys for a new universal solidarity, a new dialogue, a new culture of encounter, a new peace. And if we don't initiate this journey, nobody will do it. So this is a test. Both documents are actually a test for a prophetic church. A prophetic church is a church that claims for justice, for common good, for peace, for care for the common home, etc., but lives it. I mean, not perfectly, but it's on the journey. And I agree that Caritas should take the lead. In a way, in some parts, is taking the lead. For example, all this thing of the water and sanitation programs, the food programs, the immediate response programs, trying to link the immediate response with the long-term development. That is not easy, as we all know. It's not perfect, and there's a lot of room for improvement. But of course, we need to take the lead. But my final comment would say, I do agree that if we don't distill, if we don't breathe this into our own communities, then it will remain at some level. I don't know if a doctrinal level, I would say. But my experience with Laudato Si, and I hope we can do the same with Fratelli Tutti, with lots of members of Caritas International, of Caritas. So that my experience with Laudato Si, when we went out to poor communities in Africa, South America, and Asia to do workshops on Laudato Si, not to speak on Laudato Si, it was the best experience I've ever had. And they know perfectly well what the Pope is trying to say. And they have a lot to contribute and a lot to teach us. And I hope that we can do something similar in Fratelli Tutti, because Fratelli Tutti says explicitly that the knowledge of the people cannot be left out. There's a knowledge of being people, particularly the marginalized, the poor, the ones who don't have any voice. These are the voices we want to not just to listen, but to try to raise the level of the volume of the voice, so that we can change the international community, and we can influence the global family through their own contribution, because they have a lot to say. I think it's a good opportunity. It's an excellent proposal from Ghana, if we can take in the lead to have workshops on Fratelli Tutti and Laudato Si in our own communities, and then export, I would say, the outcome of those workshops to other regions of the world, because we need to listen.
Yes, Go ahead.
Yeah, just a few points of reflection to the last two interventions. Regarding the reflections from Ghana, this morning I was participating in your meeting this morning, and these questions were also addressed this morning. So for me, I think that we need to do now, this is just, I would say, an appetizer for us to start the reflection, but I think we should continue the reflection. And I really take the point which you said, that is guidelines. We have to reflect on certain very simple guidelines for the small communities, parish communities to reflect upon, and we will see how we can do it. And so that there can be reflection groups in the parishes so that we can address certain number of issues. And this is where I think the certain issues like debt cancellation could start from the right holders, who are the people in the parishes who are being oppressed by our selfish system. So I think we can start from there. So I also look up to you for suggestions and for ideas, so that we can start reflecting on this, and our advocacy team will be fully on it, and we are taking this very seriously, and we will put in place something. Regarding the question on interconnectivity, yes, everything is interconnected, and I fully agree with the suggestion. And we are reflecting now on the next campaign, international campaign, and I think this is one point which will be taken on board to see how do we address this interconnectivity and the incoherences and contradictions within this, and address the different decision makers and at the global level. Thank you.
Thank you, Aloysius. And I think we are ending the webinar now. Thanking all of you for your active participation. Thanking the three speakers for taking us through this very important encyclical. We started by recognizing that charity is concrete. So we wanted to explore how we can turn the words of Fratelli Tutti into action within our confederation. And the comments and we receive from our colleagues on the ground, especially those in Ghana, in Nigeria, and in Ivory Coast, and even from Dr. Arlo, who spoke about how we ensure that we are respecting the culture of those whom we serve. All those things are concrete, and they are confronting us with the reality of Caritas serving in various parts of the world. So we wanted really to start raising awareness about the publication of this encyclical, and start to introduce its content among Caritas organizations, inviting all of us to read it again, to meditate it, and to pray with it. We wanted also to start, and this is coming out clearly, to understand how Caritas organizations can use this on a concrete level, and even come up with concrete suggestions about how Fratelli Tutti can be used at the grassroots, so that it does not remain on the intellectual level, as our colleague from Ghana has pointed out. So we have a lot of many challenges ahead if we want to continue exploring means and ways of promoting the reception and the implementation of Laudato Si, of Fratelli Tutti. I started to say that from the beginning of his pontificate, Pope Francis has been really speaking to the heart of Caritas. So it is our duty to listen to him, not only to admire what he's saying, but to engage into the change that we want to see happen in our organization and also in the world where we live, a world which is confronted with many crises, and whose responses are to be found in the last two Pope Francis encyclicals, Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. So thank you for your presence today, and we hope to meet again in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye, and thank you all.
Thank you, Zan.
Goodbye.
Thank you all from Caritas Nigeria.
I see